Hello and welcome to some more Tinto reactions as we look at the responses to the Tinto Maps dev diary that we had on Friday, the map for Germany. Now, I made a post on Twitter after I worked this out. Didn't actually take that much working out, to be honest. But we know from the dev diary that there are 357 individual princes in the empire. And, well, like I said, it doesn't take much working out. But if you start on the 1st of January and every single day you play a different German HRE prince, you will finish your run of HRE princes on Christmas Day, which is just wild to me. There have been some comparisons between various games. EU3 didn't have 357 countries total. EU4, I can't remember actually how many HRE miners. I probably should have checked that. But I know that Mayo and Taxes had 130. And Mayo and Taxes was already very much, a granular system that was, very granular. So this is insane. This is confetti. If I shake my screen, YouTube compression will cry, for example. So yes, this is everyone is really stoked to see this. I've seen some interesting articles. The first time article for EU5 has been on since it started being announced. Was basically, oh, gamers are so freaking surprised, excited about this freaking country confetti. It was very funny. But anyway, let us move on and have a look at the Tinto responses. Why is Austria not split into Austria, Styria, Carinthia, and Carniola? They're going to review it. That's good because having them split up, I think, would be cool. I like more granularity because why not? Why not indeed? Let's finish our country run one per day on the 1st of January as well. Let's get that number up. Are you willing to change some of the names? For example, why Danube Bavarian and not Austrian? And likewise for Southern Bavarian and not Tyrolean. Open to suggestions, and yes, in the particular case we discussed quite in depth, as they have a Bavarian content designer on the team, actually. OPB has been hired by Paradox? Crazy. We thought the tripartite division portrayed quite well the situation in 1337, and when they discussed the naming, they agreed that this would be the more fitting and less weird given the extent. Fair enough. Also, this comment here is amazing. Amazing. It kind of reminds me of the, if you guys have watched the third Ant-Man movie, when Ant-Man gives a really ugly doll to his, 8-year-old-ish daughter, and she thinks, oh, it's so ugly. I love it. Basically, that's the vibe that we're getting from the community. Can you start adding regional and subcontinental and continental modes to this post? So they want to see, the bigger regions. But no, they can't. Not yet. The regions are currently working regions, that is, divisions to make for a smooth workflow, and they need to balance them out a bit. I would say the use of the word balance here is quite interesting. Does this mean that regions are going to be a little bit more impactful than they are in EU4? Because to my recollection, regions, the only way they actually mattered in game is if you were going to be using trading companies. And I mean, I know there's more to it than just that, but those are the most impactful things. And trading companies were really, in my opinion, bad game design. They were far too overpowered in some certain areas, like Persia. But yeah, hopefully there's something else in there as well. Remember when they end all the Tinto maps, they'll prevent all of them. Works. That's perfectly fine. What is the reasoning behind Silesian German existing at the start? It was a recent migration after all. There were plenty of Germans already in 1337 in Silesia. They had to portray them in a certain way, and trying to make a detailed account of their origins was not easy at all. They followed a similar approach for all the Eastern European Germans for consistency. That is fair enough. I've seen this several times, notably the Croatian coast and the Aegean. Can they assume that straight crossings aren't a thing? No, of course you can't. That would be silly. Straight crossings are good. They should be in the game. They have a task to review this bunch of straight crossings, so yeah, they're clearly in the game. And as we made some of the regions before, we had the functionality available. Fair enough. As long as there's not a Kent to Calais straight crossing, I'm going to be happy. That a lot of multiplayer mods add that, and it's really kind of strange to me, at least. I don't know how many people are going to agree with that, but, you know, I like a lot of multiplayer, and I did not like some of these multiplayer mods for that reason. To think the first Tinto maps comprised of just the Low Countries. Was it a test run only after posting it? You realize such a speed, it would take you 10 years to go through the entire world map. That's a fair point. So they wanted to start with the smaller regions so people get used to the granularity of the map and the feedback workflow we wanted to implement before going into wider regions. And as for total population of the HRE, 10 to 12 million. That is insane. That's really, really cool. Really cool. Love that. Maybe it's just me, but it feels like there's too many locations in the Alps. The Alps, not the Alps, no. Make it more annoying to play and to conquer, which I get would be annoying to conquer, but players might just get frustrated, and the fix is to simply decrease the number of locations. I don't agree, obviously. I feel like this is kind of weird to ask for less locations, but, you know, very few people agreed with them anyway, so... interestingly, though, very few people, well, I say very few people, but, you know, there's a lot of disagrees here with Pavia's response as well. They might do the German Alps a bit more functional after the review, that might be why the 30, as they did with French and Italian areas, but these got more locations, so I don't think we're actually going to lose locations in the Alps, but for one that we'll get into in a bit, because it's less than 100 pixels, I believe. But yeah, I don't care that there's, I mean, more granularity is up to a certain point always fine. I guess this is past Dezogli's certain point, but not mine. No, don't remove locations from there. Have mercy. This is talking about the same comment. Wider Slovenian region is always crap in Paradox games, density-wise, and province density. Have you played Imperator, Arctic Knight? I feel like you would enjoy Imperator. Don't make Alpine regions suffer even more. Keep the location density, please, and Carinthia was important. So they haven't removed any locations from there. They just made it more clear to understand for the player, which is great. Very much more in tune with what I would like. No need to remove stuff. 2 questions. Why isn't Magdeburg a prelate? It's an overlook and they have now fixed it. Why isn't Bar a part of the HRE? Is that because they're a vassal of France? They should be vassals of both. Fun feudal stuff. The western half of the territory, including the capital of the country, was made a French fief mouvant after the Treaty of Bruges in 1301, and subject to the jurisdiction of the Parliament of Paris, where the eastern half was still considered part of the HRE. Additionally, the counts were elevated to dukes and peers of France in 1354. Therefore, we have considered that it's better to portray Bar as a country under the sphere of France, with its eastern half still being imperial lands. Yeah, that makes sense. They're, you know, I wonder how owning territory of the HRE when you're not a HRE member, I wonder how that is going to play out, because obviously that was, you know, a big part of the HRE gameplay in EU4, that you would want to be taking these places back for the Empire. But right now, like, we don't know how it's going to work, so maybe it's different, who knows. Could you please spare us by adding Vaduz as a location and springing off from Feldkirch? No idea where these places are, by the way, and I'm not going to go look at the map. It's right next to Liechtenstein. It makes sense. So Feldkirch is already decent sized, but they will see. And then Obergurgi is such a tiny location, though it's inconsistently small, and it's the same size as hypothetical Venice would be. So we'll look at his attachment here and just see which one that they're talking about. It's this fella right here. This is a really tiny location, and it is on the list of ones. It's a candidate to be removed as it is too small, which is what I was talking about earlier. I don't think there's a need to make it go away. I mean, what you could do is simply make it bigger. I mean, it's not going to take any land from anywhere else if it just gets a little bit more alpine stuff, you know? It could work. But either way, let's move on. What holding do the Hohenzollerns start with? He couldn't spot them. And will there be an event for them to rise and get Brandenburg and other pockets that they took, like the ones in Rhine and East Frisia? So Johann II von Hohenzollern is the Count of Ansbach in 1337, ruling over 4 to 5 locations. And there's content that would make them possible to rule over Brandenburg. Yes, this is what I got quite a few comments about trying to get the Hohenzollerns over Brandenburg. We did actually see that as a comment at some point from Pavia, I believe. That there were going to be some events or some such that would make Brandenburg have the ability to get von Hohenzollerns, von Wittelsbachs, or some made-up counts at some point. So basically an event that lets you choose which dynasty that you go with, I would assume. Something like that. Why is it Thüring and not Thüringen? German content designers have to improve their German skills. Crazy. They must have been, drinking beer. It's close to Oktoberfest. They were practicing. Don't worry about it. Are there any other IOs beside the HRE and the Catholic Church in Germany at the moment, or even planned? Is it not enough with the HRE and the Catholic Church? No, it's not. No, we need all of them. That you already want even more wonky institutions in Germany. I don't think we have any more IOs for the first 2 ages. This is actually incorrect, and we'll go into the correction in a moment. But then things will spice up at the Age of Reformation, and a certain Saxonian priest will appear, naturally. Do you guys have any fixed limits on our location size? Yeah, we already heard 100 pixels. Or do you just eyeball it based on how dense you feel a region should be? Similarly, what are the upper and lower numbers for locations per province area? So, yeah, the lower limit is 100 pixels, and then a rule of thumb is that a location can be no more than 3 times the size of a neighboring one to ensure that there's a smooth enough transition from a more dense to a less dense region. Perfect. And then for upper and lower numbers for locations per province and area, the accepted threshold is usually 3 to 10 locations, which is quite a wide margin, I would say, with the standard usually being 4 to 6, although there are also flexible limits. Does HRE have mechanics to fight or contain nations who become too powerful? Coalitions, that is pure mechanics. But there are also some internal HRE features. Good to know. Love that. The Schwarz silver mines were famous enough to get their own event in EU4. Now we have Schwarz in the game, and it produces livestock. Will there be an event to change this early 15th century? There is, in fact, an event. Good. Future content, not everything in the game at the start in 1337 is going to be what your game will look like later on, and something to this effect is perfectly reasonable to add into the game, for sure. Why isn't Treviso in the HRE? So they asked last week to the content designers who were in charge of the HRE borders, as he also wanted to know if it was working as designed, and they told him that apparently Treviso was not considered a part of it in the 14th century. Although I have to say the borders of the imperial territory in Italy are not the clearest, he did have some research of Trieste as well, and it was quite difficult to figure out what was going on there in 1337. The HRE has always had tenuous control over Italy, and of course, we have the Shadow Kingdom event in EU4 that splits all that out of it completely, but it wasn't exactly nice, clean lines on maps earlier on than that. A few thoughts and questions and first impressions. Changed blah blah to blah blah, they'll check it. Low population numbers can't possibly be accurate, they'll check it, naturally. Are there any wars or diplomatic relations active at the game start? There might be, though they have to review them. I'm not sure what kind of wars would be going on. Of course, we know that the Poles and Lithuanians are at war with the Teutons and Livonians, but that's not exactly in the HRE. I can't imagine there would be zero conflicts, though. If we know that we are going to be able to have conflicts in the game, at the start of the game, which is something that we don't have in EU4 anymore, because of course it used to be that plenty of countries started the game at war. We are maybe can expect more of that, not just the Poles and Lithuanians. Some Germans probably will be at war with each other. I can't imagine with 357 countries that absolutely every single one of them is at peace. Doesn't strike me as terribly realistic. But very much so, I think we might be getting something. Do different dynasties have the possibility of inheritance set up at the game start? For the Imperial Crown, no. That's handled through mechanics. But interesting succession inheritance-ness coming up. Will Switzerland be scripted from, and if you do form Switzerland, would it be a country tag or an international organization? And then here we go, pointing out that there are more in the HRE than just the HRE and the Papal State. Switzerland, they'll consider making the Swiss Confederation an international organization, at least in its initial stage of formation. And then with that international organization, you probably will be able to get it to the point where you can unify it and become Switzerland. Maybe Helvetia as well, who knows. Something I'll always ask when it comes to HRE, do we have Partition Inheritance? Yes. CK3 mechanics of inheritance, partition, Gavelkind is coming into EU5, and that is incredible. There is going to be different types of succession laws. I mean, we already knew that that was going to be coming in some ways, but we never knew that we'd get Gavelkind. My ruler is dead and half my country is gone. I'm sorry, that might be a nightmare for most people, but I think that's cool that we're going to be able to get into a situation where the HRE might even become more divided than it is at the start of the game, and it won't just get unified instantly. I can envisage a multiplayer game where we've got a bunch of HRE people, and then somebody either rages or rage quits due to Gavelkind. I mean, I guess I should say just partition inheritance. I love that, though. That's super cool. That's super flavorful. I'm here for it. Is Western Pomerania considered Slavic or Germanic culture? So German, as it's considered German, as is Eastern Pomeranian. They've represented the Slavic cultures of the region under Palabian and Kashubian denominations, and yes, because of the ongoing German colonization, the region is completely striped, and there's some pockets with Palabian majority. And if we go to the culture map mode real quick, we'll be able to see that. Here we go. So Western Pomeranian there is German. Markish, I believe, is also German. And Palabian is German. No, Palabian is not German. Kashubian is not German. So basically that. I really like this setup. I have actually heard quite a bit of complaining about the culture setup in Germany, and I can only say that I am ignorant and I will not argue with you all. End of that story. I like it from a gameplay mechanics standpoint. I like it from a aesthetics standpoint. I don't know how historically accurate the cultures are, and I will leave that up to people who have studied German culture in the fucking 14th century. That's on you guys. That's on you guys. Where am I up to? Whoops, I've lost it. There it is. So yeah. They'll review it if it needs to be further expanded, of course. Naturally, that goes for pretty much everything. Will there be an event or something to represent the partition succession of the Wittelsbach lands even further? So Straubing, Ingolstadt, Palatinate, Neuburg, Palatinate, Simmern, etc. And yes, they have partition succession. I brought this in. Obviously, we just talked about partition succession, but I included this comment purely to say, it is about the Wittelsbach. So Bavaria is going to explode. As it did frequently in history. We'll share later today that the blah blah blah. In between themselves, since a lot of the dynasties had closer distant marriages and relatives, so basically inheritance mechanics. Inheritances are mechanical. They don't set up or script them. So they're not going to say, oh, this guy's a Wittelsbach, so here, when he dies, then these lands get split up into this. It's all mechanical. It's stuff that is written into code to work properly. So that is awesome, because that can be basically, these mechanics can apply to very many different countries. If they have partition succession, this is what is going to happen to them, not just the specific, oh yes, this country did this. A Burgundian inheritance in mechanics rather than scripts is basically where I'm seeing this. The Swiss Confederation will most likely be an IO comprising several landed cantons. The Hanza is a different thing, of course, which Johan will talk about at some point. Hanza is, we know it's it's not on the map, but it's in the game as the Hanza. We saw that in a very early dev diary on the markets, or the merchant situation, maritime presence. It was in a screenshot, but we know that it's not a country on the map. Whether it is a country that you can play that is landless, whether you are going to be able to play as an IO, there are a lot of unanswered questions here. A lot of unanswered questions. Can the Emperor protect the Empire from powerful countries like Hungary, France, and Naples? The Emperor seems so weak. The Empire is so decentralized. It's the idea, yes. Hopefully they will be able to defend it. But being the Emperor in Project Caesar will be much more challenging than in EU4. Well, that goes without saying, because Austria is one of the easiest countries to play in the entire game. You know, getting that December 11th personal union war over Bohemia, getting a free PU later on over Hungary, getting a PU over Poland, which also has Lithuania at this point, so you get a free PU over Poland and Lithuania. And, I mean, starting off as the HRE Emperor with all of that land and all of those PUs, your game is going to be so incredibly trivial. Austria is one of the easiest tanks to play. And yeah, I would bloody hope it's going to be more challenging. I would so hope that. I would be so disappointed if it wasn't. But yeah, no, for sure. This, I mean, it's not even Austria that is the emperor in EU5. So, but if it, the same shit applies. Let's be honest, the same shit applies. Speaking of the Swiss Confederation, if we centralize the Confederation, we'll be able to play as the federal state of these members, as a sort of landless country, not on land directly, but through the federal states and cantons, provinces, giving us a portion of their income. So, maybe. It's a bit of abstraction on how federal and confederal works. For instance, the stadtholder of the Dutch Republic had power and jurisdiction over the provinces on certain issues, and that actually evolved into the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Landless IOs fit much better for non-territorialized authorities, such as the HRE. Are we going to be able to play as this? Can we play as the HRE? Just that, the HRE is our tag. That would be kind of awesome. I would love that. But finally, there was this thread here, renaming marshes to wetlands. Really good thread here by Daniel the Finlander. Currently one of the topographic map types is called marsh. A bit confusing because by a common definition, marsh is explicitly a grassy wetland. Yet we can see marsh terrain and forest overlap. Marsh is a subtype, the broader definition of wetland. I agreed with this. I thought this was a good idea. For sure. I definitely thought this was a good idea. It makes sense to me, and personally, I would have put marsh as a vegetation rather than a topography. So if this was to change so that, you know, we had a topography of wetland and then you could have vegetation on top of that, maybe that would be a better situation. But it was heavily agreed with. You know, this is a very heavily agreed with thread. The reason I'm bringing it up is because we have a dev response to this. Johan saying, we've been talking about it internally a fair bit. It's non-trivial though, as it involves a lot of asset renaming, so calling it marsh everywhere in the code and graphics will confuse some people a few years from now. I'm not too worried about in a few years from now, to be honest, because I guess it's maybe sort of a similar situation as a lot of the things in EU4 in the code are named things that they're not named in game. There's difference in localization. I mean, the most famous example is aggressive expansion. Everyone knows aggressive expansion. Unless you're Flurry Worry, you just ignore that shit. But aggressive expansion in the game files is called Bad Boy. So, hopefully, there's a way that they're going to be able to change that. So here, it's Bill saying, Notepad++, find in files goes a long way. Yes, find and replace all. But no, don't do that, or some text will be very, very funny. Wetlandsel does not sound like a good title. Is there a country or province or whatever called Marshall? Marshall? I'm not sure how this would fit. Either way. Luckily, we can match case an exact word. Yes, we have so many amalgamated words set up. It's a lot of work. Like I say, I think the entire process of game design is a lot of work. Is this within the realms of acceptable amount of work for payoff? I kind of believe that it is. I think this would be it is a good suggestion. But I'm only me, so yeah. What really can I say? Yesterday I uploaded a video talking about the responses to the Tinto talks on warfare, which were great and really well received. Love that. I mean, the Tinto talks was well received. And I had mentioned to Johan that I was doing this video. I was going to split it up, and while I was recording, I had to turn off Discord. That's how I fixed the music issue. Is simply turning off Discord. When I turned Discord back on, I got another message from Johan saying that he'd replied to a bunch more messages just to stress me out. So I'm going to go over some of these extra messages as well, because why not? Many ways to simulate settled non-horde nations having mainly cav armies from levies. There are plenty of factors that determine that. What those factors are, we don't know. It could be Imperator style. This culture's levies are this type of unit breakdown. We might see that, potentially. Who knows? Does the movement of armies on the map advance each daily tick or by each hourly tick? They advance each hourly tick. Then again, here talking about army cycling, and it's not really relevant. I don't think army cycling is what we need to be talking about. It's all about army reinforcement. Army cycling is only really possible when you have no morale to take into account. But we do, so we can't. But yeah, talking about breaking up doom stacks into smaller armies, explaining what cycling is. And Johan's saying here, there are some things that will limit it, or that we'll talk about next week. I don't know. I feel like he's asking about something that is not going to be a thing, and then Johan's responding to, yeah, we'll limit this thing that won't happen anyway. I don't really get that. I don't really get it. What does it mean for Pop's wealth and their ability to buy goods when they're raised in levies or employed as a standing army? It will reduce the demand. So that's nice. If you've got too much demand for something, just raise your levies and they can't demand it anymore. Does this mean that archers are always exposed to attack? Is there no way to shield them from being attacked? So archers are basically like infantry. You will be suffering casualties on your archers in combat. That's just a thing. Same with your cannons. They will be suffering casualties, which worries me, but I don't know. I feel like I feel like I'm missing the idea of a backline, but I don't know if that is simply just because I'm too EU4 coded, and the idea of losing cannons scares me. Maybe that's it. But actually, that's something I'd like to ask you guys. What do you think about this? Bombard phase and then cannons being on the front row after the fact. We may end up, losing our cannons to battles, and this music is very interesting, but it just ended, so it's fine. What do you guys think about that? I'd like to know. I know Johan has been answering questions all morning. Yeah, the man's up to 12 pages. Crazy. We know armies will be able to join battles from several locations away. If we assume battles shouldn't last more than a day, does that mean we're going to see armies move multiple locations per day tick? It seems weird when you're playing at high speeds. So in some places, it takes less than a day to move from one location to another. If you're at speed 5, that's basically instant, because the hour ticks aren't... They're simulated, but you don't get shown them. It's going to be weird. But yeah... I guess that is the price to pay for increased granularity, is armies technically moving faster a bit. But again, now onto the final page. Will battle casualties be much lower in Project Caesar than in EU4? Depends on how you play, for sure. Do you think it's reasonable to have as a goal to make it impossible to have more casualties from battle than from attrition? Or do you think gameplay-wise isn't that fun? I hate attrition. It's the weakest part of my game in EU4. In multiplayer, my attrition casualties are usually around the same as my battle casualties. This here is Skanderbeg. It's slightly strangely zoomed. Apologies for that, but it doesn't really matter that much. Skanderbeg's a way to analyze your EU4 games and see all the stats and lovely numbers. This is from a multiplayer that I'm playing in Anbana. And while I'm not at the top of this map at all, I am on here. But just to look at the various things, this is an AI. They have 62,000 battle casualties, 56,000 attrition. This is a player who's got about 3 times as many battle as attrition. This is also a player who's got more battle than attrition. As Jakuma, a player, more battle than attrition. And it goes the same way, or mostly. This guy's got more attrition. If I look for me, where am I? Because I am pretty bad. I must be on page 2. That's worrying. Am I here at all? Here I am. I have this many from battle, this many from attrition. So battle and attrition casualties, like I'm pretty bad at it, but this is early game. This is only after 1 session, so it does depend on how you play. In EU4, I guess it's going to depend on how you play in EU5 as well. Historically, attrition disease, I guess, cost far more lives than battles did. So maybe that could be a thing that is looked at and made more prevalent. But who knows? Does it prevent them from taking too much damage if they are with other units, like infantry, for example, talking about the archers? So the archers will break quicker, thus taking less strength damage. Okay, fair enough. Could you explain a bit more about frontage? We'll be happy to get some answers. For one, is it the same for each section? Yes, it's the same, and fractions will occur, so we'll be able to have like 7.85 frontage. Do different regiments take different frontage? For example, artillery taking, less frontage than auxiliaries and cavalry and infantry, etc. They can have. I guess something like special units like these, steppe horses may have, wider frontage potentially. Who knows? Could you provide us with some approximate numbers? For example, no, we can't, unfortunately. Do auxiliary units take part in the battle? Yes. My donkey's gonna get fucked up, is what we're saying here. And then an Attrition system looks amazing. I agree. In EU4, armies feeling bigger over time is done by having a bigger economy in the late game that could support it. If in this game the size of regiments also increases, wouldn't that generate the feeling of having an exaggeratedly bigger army? If the maintenance costs increase along with regiment size, you'd have to disband some regiments in order to keep sustaining your current army with your current economy. So, gotta keep your economy improving then. That's just the way of it. Here, again, wondering about the numbers of artillery. Yeah. Battle of Leipzig would only have 7 artillery combined, assuming 3,600 men regiments. So artillery is about 1,200 men per unit. How many guns that is, I don't know. We'll be able to tell that when we get information on the cannons themselves. We can actually, if we just do this a moment, this, Tinto Talks 11, we saw this, horse archers. Horse archers, obviously we know how many units there are, how many men there are. There are 100 dudes in a unit of horse archers, and they require these goods, and these goods for maintenance. When we get this, but for artillery, we'll be able to see how many men are in it, and how many guns. That's what I'm looking for. I would like to see, we have Tinto Talks on Wednesday, we have the Saturday building, we have the Friday maps. How about a Thursday troop type, or a Tuesday troop? Tuesday troop type. That would be cool. I think that would be really cool. I hope to see that. Let me see if I understand this by playing out a hypothetical left flank red team blah 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 stuff, trying to do a whole thing. But more than one regiment can reinforce from the reserves in a single tick, so that's good. If you're losing many units on the front lines, then more than one can reinforce at a time. So yes, good. Just means that the smaller the 2 data types limit is being removed, so crashing at... Okay, this is talking about the amount of provinces, I guess. Crashing at 2 to the power of 16, don't know what number that is, was found in Vic 3. Actually, what is 2 to the power of 16? No idea, don't care. But it might be similar. So, hopefully we don't have this issue. Mods should be able to have as many provinces as they want. As many as they want. There's no way that this is relevant. 2 to the power of 16 is 65,000... There's no way we're getting... Wait, aren't we getting 30,000 in EU5? Didn't we already see that we're getting 30,000? Maybe this might become relevant. This may in fact become relevant. One more question. Thanks for answering the first one. Can we add more unit types? Say more than one auxiliary present and have 2 slots for different auxiliaries? Yes, we already knew this. We can have multiple different types. Modders can have as many categories as they like. So not just infantry, cavalry, artillery, auxiliary. They can also have mythical beasts, dragons and giants and shit. Because why not? Go ham, modders. I would love to see what you guys can come up with. How much will tech impact battles? A fair bit. It's hard to judge, but they also want advanced nations to be better, which, you know, makes sense. Of course you do. Question regarding the topic is, can we have more than 3 EU4 types of units? Not only infantry, cavalry, artillery, but also heavy infantry, skirmishers, light scout and cav, etc. They have 4 categories, and usually light and heavy variants for infantry, cav, and lots of other unique variants. Lovely. And finally, the final comment, worried about what the level 5 speed will be like. If I play on an island and I want 10 years to pass quickly, how long will I have to wait? About the same time as EU4. So this is kind of what we're talking about with the performance. There was a comment about, what is the performance like when you're passing the time? In EU5, performance will be around about the same as EU4, ignoring the hourly ticks. You know, go to speed 5 in EU4, go to speed 5 in EU5. You're going to go around about the same speed. I think maybe one of the first things I will do is I will do a comparison. I will time how long it takes for me to go a certain amount of years in EU5 on speed 5, and I'll do the same for EU4, and we can do a little bit of a comparison. That might be pretty useful. But anyway, that is the end of the Tinto reacts, responds, comments things. Thank you all very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let's look at Germany again. I will be back on Wednesday with more Tinto talks on logistics. So that is going to be a super interesting dev diary. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss it, and I will see you then. Bye-bye.